Somebody's grandma forgot to stay home. Tommy laughed. His men laughed. 22 bikers in a small Arizona diner, and one old woman in the corner who didn't even look up from her newspaper. Southwest Provision Supply, she said. Clearwater Holdings. Garrett Finch. The bar went silent. Tommy's hand stopped moving. The books, she said. We have the books, Tommy. He stared at her. 68 years old. White hair. A leather vest he hadn't seen in 30 years. A patch his best man had gone pale, recognizing, "Who are you?" he said slowly. She picked up the signed document, folded it, placed it in her vest pocket. "I'm the consequence," she said. "Every choice you made when you came to this town, 22 bikes, one woman, and a secret 30 years in the making. This is the story of what the patch really meant." Sound came first, always does in a town this small. A low rumble, then louder, then the kind of thunder that doesn't come from clouds. It comes from engines, Harley engines. A lot of them. Ridgecrest, Arizona woke up that Tuesday morning the way a man wakes up when someone kicks his door in. Sudden, confused, not ready. The diner windows rattled. Coffee cups shook on their saucers. Old Pete Sandoval, standing outside his hardware store on Main Street, didn't even turn around. He just looked down at his boots, took a slow breath, and went back inside. That said everything. Ridgecrest used to be a different kind of town. 30 years ago, maybe 40, it had a pulse, a real one. The copper mine 3 miles east brought money. The money brought families. The families built a school, a proper grocery, 2 gas stations, and a diner that served the best pie in 3 counties. Dorothy's pie, specifically. Cherry in summer, apple in fall. Now the mine was closed. Had been for 16 years. The young people left first, the way young people always leave when there's nothing left to stay for. Then the money dried up, then the second gas station closed, then the grocery got smaller, then smaller again. What was left was about 3,000 people who had, for various reasons, decided to stay. Stubbornness mostly. A few of them had nowhere else to go. Some of them, the older ones, had roots too deep to pull up. Some, a very small number, simply believed that a place is worth fighting for until the last possible moment. But 3,000 people who are tired don't fight much. And Tommy, Torch, Briggs knew exactly how to read a tired town. He rolled in that morning with 22 bikes behind him. The Arizona chapter of the Hells Angels, not the whole organization, just the Phoenix crew, Tommy's crew, had been moving through small towns along the I-10 corridor for the better part of a year. Looking, measuring. The way a man walks through a house before he buys it. Ridgecrest was the one he decided to keep. The bikes came down Main Street slow, deliberate. The kind of slow that says, "We are not in a hurry, because we already own this place and we know it." Tommy rode at the front, 55 years old, built like he'd been assembled out of spare parts and anger. A beard that had gone mostly gray, a vest covered in patches, years of them, layers of them, a whole autobiography written in leather and thread. Eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky, cold, assessing, never still. He pulled up in front of Dorothy's diner and cut his engine. One by one, the others did the same. The silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. Tommy swung off his bike, stretched, looked up and down the street like a man taking inventory, which is exactly what he was doing. He pushed open the diner door. Inside, the breakfast crowd had gone very quiet. Dorothy herself, 71 years old, 5 feet tall, built like a woman who had survived difficult things and intended to survive more, stood behind the counter. Her hands were steady, her face was not unkind, but her eyes had gone to a specific place, the place where a person goes when they're afraid and have decided not to show it. 4 locals at the counter, 2 couples at tables, a trucker nursing his 3rd coffee by the window, and in the far corner booth by herself, a woman with white hair pulled back into a neat bun, blue-gray sweater, reading glasses perched on her nose, a folded newspaper on the table beside a cup of black coffee. She didn't look up when the door opened. Tommy walked in. His crew filled the space behind him. Not all 22, just the inner circle. 6 men. They brought the smell of leather and road dust and something harder to name. Tommy looked around the diner. His gaze moved across each face, measuring, settling, stopped on the woman in the corner. He almost smiled. "Well, look at that," he said, loud enough for the whole room. Somebody's grandma forgot to stay home. A couple of his men laughed. The easy laughter of people who laugh because the boss laughed, not because it's funny. The woman in the corner turned a page of her newspaper. That was all. She didn't look up, didn't stiffen, didn't reach for her coffee cup nervously. She just turned the page, slowly, like she had all the time in the world. Like there were 22 motorcycles worth of men standing 10 feet away, and none of them were worth interrupting her reading for. Tommy stared at her for a moment longer than he intended to. Then he looked away. moved to the counter, snapped his fingers at Dorothy for coffee. Dorothy poured it without a word. But in the corner, behind her reading glasses, Margaret Calloway's eyes moved 1 inch to the left, just enough to see Tommy's reflection in the window glass. She counted his men, noted where they stood, marked the 2 near the door, the one by the bathroom, the one pretending to look at his phone near the register. Then she went back to her article. She'd been reading about migratory birds. Margaret Calloway had lived in Ridgecrest for 11 years, long enough to know everyone, long enough for everyone to know her, long enough that people had mostly stopped wondering about her past and had simply accepted her as what she appeared to be. A widow, 68 years old, kept a tidy house on Sycamore Street with a garden of sunflowers that made the whole block look better, drove a 10-year-old pickup that she maintained herself, brought casseroles to people when they were sick, read the newspaper every morning at Dorothy's, went to bed early, bothered no one. That was the version of Margaret Calloway that Ridgecrest knew. It was true as far as it went, it just didn't go very far. She left the diner 40 minutes later, paid her bill, left a good tip the way she always did, said goodbye to Dorothy the way she always did. Outside, the bikes were still parked. A couple of Tommy's men were leaning against them, watching the street. They watched her walk to her truck. She was aware of them watching. She didn't change her pace. She drove home, unlocked her front door, put her keys on the hook by the door, same as always. Put on the kettle for a second cup of coffee, same as always. Stood at her kitchen window and looked out at the sunflowers. Stood there for a long phone and dialed 2 rings. 3. Dorothy. Mag. Dorothy's voice was careful. You saw. I saw. Mag watched a sunflower move in the slight morning breeze. When did it start? Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Tommy came through about 6 weeks ago. Just himself and 2 others that first time. Looking around, asking questions about property, and then he came back 3 weeks ago. Different questions. Who owns what? Who's behind on what? He talked to Frank at the bank for a long time. Frank looked shaken when he left. Mag nodded to herself. She'd seen that pattern before, decades ago. Different towns, different men, same pattern. The way a hunter walks a new territory before he sets his traps. Something else, Dorothy said. Mag waited. Danny, Dorothy's voice dropped lower. She's been worried about something for weeks. I've seen it. She thinks she's hiding it, but you know how kids, how young people are. They can't hide things from people who've been watching faces for 50 years. I know, Mag said. A small silence. You already know, Dorothy said. Not a question. I know enough, Mag said. I'm waiting for her to tell me herself. Another silence. Longer. Mag, these aren't the small-town trouble. These are, I know what they are, Dorothy. A pause. Okay, Dorothy said. Okay, I trust you. Go about your day. Don't change anything. Don't seem like anything's different, and you? Mag looked out at the sunflowers again. Beyond them, the low brown hills. The endless Arizona sky. I'm going to go check on something in the garage, she said. The garage was separate from the house. A proper garage, not just a carport. Her husband Ray had built it when they first moved to Ridgecrest the year before he died. He'd done it himself over 3 weekends with the careful attention he gave to everything he built. She unlocked it, stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Oil, metal, old leather. The particular smell of decades. Along the back wall, her tools hung in their proper places. She kept them organized the way Ray had taught her. Not his original habit. He'd been messier than her. But she'd taken it on after he was gone. Something to maintain. Something that kept a shape to the right. Shelves of parts cleanly labeled. A workbench with good light, and in the center of the garage, covered by a canvas tarp that had not been moved in 4 years, a 1979 Harley-Davidson shovelhead. Midnight black, every component original. She'd maintained it faithfully, even under the tarp. Oil changed on schedule, cables checked, battery kept on tender. It had never stopped being ready to run. She had just stopped being ready to ride it. She walked to it, put her hand on the tarp, didn't pull it off, just felt the shape of the engine through the canvas. Ray's voice came to her the way it always did. Not a hallucination, not a ghost, just memory doing what good memories do. Staying close when you need them. Some things don't stop being true just because you stop paying attention to them, Mag. She stood there for a while. Then she turned to the corner of the garage. A wooden chest. Oak with brass hardware gone dark with age. She kept the key on a ring with no other keys. She carried it everywhere without ever thinking about it. She crouched down in front of the chest, put the key in the lock, and then did not turn it, not yet. She stood up, smoothed her slacks, and went back inside to make her coffee. Danny Shaw was 29 years old and had in the past 18 months Lost more than most people lose in a lifetime. First, her mother. Carol Shaw had died of pancreatic cancer 14 months ago, small bedroom of the house on Mesquite Road that she'd rented for 20 years. It had been fast, as these things go, 4 months from diagnosis to the end. Danny had come home from Phoenix, where she'd been working as a licensed pharmacist, to take care of her mother during that time. She had never gone back. Part of it was grief. Part of it was that going back felt like leaving twice. And part of it, the part Danny was least willing to look at directly, was that Carol Shaw had asked her, in those last weeks, to stay close to Ridgecrest. To stay close to Mag, you'll understand eventually, her mother had said. The way mothers say things that make no sense at the time and perfect sense later, so Danny had stayed. She'd found work at Dorothy's diner. Temporary, she told herself, just until she figured things out. That was 8 months ago. She was quick with coffee, remembered orders without writing them down. Dorothy liked her, which in Ridgecrest meant something. But for the past 10 weeks, something had been wrong. Mag had noticed the moment it started. Danny's eyes moved to the window when certain bikes went past. The slight pause before she answered a simple question. The way she sometimes looked at her phone and then put it face down without responding, with a specific kind of deliberateness. The deliberateness of someone managing something they hadn't yet named to themselves as serious. Mag had seen it. Said nothing. Waited. Because some things a person has to arrive at themselves, and the job of someone who cares isn't always to cut the road shorter. Sometimes it's to make sure the road is safe to walk. It was a Thursday evening when Danny finally came to the house on Sycamore Street. She'd called ahead, which wasn't unusual. She came for dinner sometimes. Carol had been close to Mag, very close, in a way that Danny had always understood as important but never fully explained. Mag had been at Carol's side through the illness. Had been there at the end. Danny knocked anyway, even though the door was unlocked. That was her way. Come in, Mag called from the kitchen. They ate first. Mag had made roast chicken and potatoes, Carol's recipe, which Mag had gotten from Carol and was now quietly returning to Danny every time she cooked it. There was no great ceremony about this. It was just what Mag did. Kept the things she could. After dinner, Danny helped clear the table. They moved to the living room. Mag made tea, set it on the coffee table, sat down, and waited. Danny held her mug with both hands. Looked at it for a long time. I did something stupid, she finally said. Mag said nothing. About 3 months ago, Danny's voice was steady, but just barely. I had a bill I couldn't cover. The hospital sent a final notice for some of Mom's last treatment. Insurance had covered most of it, but there was a gap. Almost $3,000. I needed to pay it before the end of the month or it was going to collections. She paused. Mag waited. I was talking to someone at the bar one night, just venting. And this guy, he said he knew someone who did informal loans. No credit check. Quick, he made it sound simple. Mag set down her tea. The man you borrowed from, she said. Danny described him. Young, mid-20s, brown hair, tattoo on his left forearm. A skull with something behind it. Mag knew the tattoo. She'd seen it that morning in the diner, and the loan, Mag said. What were the terms? Danny closed her eyes briefly. $3,000 due back in 60 days. With interest, she paused. The interest was not what I expected. How much do they say you owe now? $12,000. As of last week. Danny's voice didn't break. She wouldn't let it. He came to the diner. He was polite about it. That was the worst part. He was very polite. Said if I couldn't pay, they had other ways I could. She stopped. You don't have to say the rest, Mag said. Danny nodded. Press lips together, Danny. Mag's voice was quiet. Even. Look at me. Danny looked up. You did the right thing coming to me. You did a hard thing. That matters. I should come sooner, yes, Mag said simply. No cushioning, no, oh, don't be so hard on yourself, just yes. And then, but you came now. That's what we have to work with. Danny let out a breath that she seemed to have been holding for weeks. What do we do, she said, right now? Nothing. Tonight, you eat, you sleep, you go home safe. These men are not going to do anything dramatic in the next 24 hours. They've just arrived. Still in the looking stage, Mag picked up her tea again. Danny hesitated. Who are they? The man who came to the diner, he mentioned. He said, Tommy Briggs. Like I was supposed to know what that meant. It means they're organized, Mick said. And it means this isn't just about your $12,000. That's not why men like that come to a town like this. Then what? They want the town, Mag said it simply. Like stating a weather forecast. The loan is just a way of putting roots down. Finding people they can use. Finding people who owe them things. She looked at Danny. You're not alone in this. I'd guess there are 4 or 5 others in Ridgecrest who've found themselves in similar situations over the past few months. Danny stared at her. How do you know all this? Mag almost smiled. Almost. I've seen it before, she said. There was something in her tone that made Danny go quiet. Something behind the words that Danny couldn't quite see clearly yet. Like a shape in fog, she didn't push it. Go home, Mag said gently. Lock your doors. Don't respond to him if he contacts you. And don't tell anyone else we spoke. Danny stood up. She looked younger than 29 in that moment, not in a naive way. In the way people look when they're relieved to have someone they trust taking up some of the weight. My mom used to say, she started. I know what your mom used to say, Mag said softly. Danny nodded, picked up her jacket, paused at the door. Thank you, Mag. Lock your doors, Mag said again. She listened to the sound of the car until it faded. Then she sat still for a long time. The house made its quiet sounds. The refrigerator hummed. A desert wind moved through the sunflowers outside. She thought about Carol Shaw, about a hospital bed in a small room on Mesquite Road, about a hand holding hers. Look after my girl, Mag. You're the only one I trust. I'll keep her safe, she had said. She had meant it. She still meant it. She got up, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed. The next morning, Mag drove to the Iron Horse Saloon, not the best part of the decision she'd ever made. But not the worst either. The Iron Horse was on the edge of town. A roadhouse that had changed hands 3 times in the past decade and now, apparently, changed hands again in a way that wasn't on any paperwork. Tommy's people had claimed it the way water claims low ground. Gradually, then completely, she parked. Went in. It was 10 in the morning. The bar was populated by a specific kind of person, the kind who treats 10 in the morning the same as 10 at night if the circumstances call for it. 4 of Tommy's men were at the pool table, 2 more at the bar, and Tommy himself at a corner table. Phone in one hand, coffee in the other. He looked up when Mag walked in. He didn't recognize her at first. She was, after all, just a woman in a sensible sweater walking into a biker bar at 10 in the morning. This fell into the category of odd rather than threatening. We're closed, one of the men at the bar said. The sign outside says open, Mag said pleasantly. Tommy waved his hand slightly. The man at the bar settled back. Mag walked to Tommy's table, set an envelope on it, sat down in the chair across from him without being invited to. He looked at the envelope. Looked at her. $12,000, he said. Not a question, he already knew the shape of this. 3,000, Mag said. The principal. What Danny Shaw originally borrowed. Tommy leaned back in his chair. He had the look of a man who had been through enough negotiations to find this one boring. That's not how interest works, sweetheart. What Danny borrowed was $3,000. What you're charging her is $10,000 in interest on a 90-day loan. There isn't a court in this country that would call that enforceable. Good thing we're not in court, Tommy said. Around the pool table, the conversation had gone quiet. The men were listening without appearing to listen. The bar felt smaller. Mag did not look at them. She kept her eyes on Tommy. My name is Margaret Calloway, she said. I live on Sycamore Street. I've lived here 11 years. I'm this young woman's closest family, and I'm here to settle this debt cleanly. $3,000 today. Done. Tommy looked at her for a long moment. She was, he had to admit, unusual. Most civilians, and he classed everyone outside his world as civilians, either came in angry or came in scared. This woman was neither. She was something harder to place, lady, he said. I don't know who you think you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to, she said. Something in her tone made him pause. A fraction of a second. She noticed. Take your envelope, he said, and go home. Send the girl to see me herself. Mag left the envelope on the table. She stood up. She looked around the room once. Just once quickly, the practiced look of someone cataloging exits and positions. Then she looked back at Tommy. Before I go, she said. Her voice dropped slightly, just enough that only Tommy could hear clearly. I want you to know something. The last man who sat in a chair like that one in a place like this one and told me to send the girl to see him herself, he's running a car wash in Flagstaff now. Has been since 1987. Went from running 30 men to counting change from a register. She paused. I just thought that was worth mentioning. She picked up her purse, walked to the door. Tommy stared after her. His face hadn't changed, but something behind his eyes had shifted. From the other end of the bar, Eddie Voss, called Grease, 61 years old, Tommy's longest-serving member, watched her go. His face had gone a particular color, the color of a man who has just recognized something he thought he'd never see again. Tommy looked over at him. You know her? No, Grease said too fast. Tommy caught it. Eddie Grease looked at his beer. I don't know her, I've heard a name. A long time ago. What name? Grease set his bottle down carefully. Iron Mag. Silence. And, Tommy said. Grease shook his head. Just once. Slowly, I'd want to know more before I did anything, he said. That's all. Tommy looked at the door she'd walked out of. Then at the envelope on the table, he didn't pick it up. That night at 11:15, there was a quiet knock at Mag's back door. She was still awake. She opened it. Eddie Voss stood on her back step. He'd come alone. No bike he'd walked, which meant he hadn't wanted to be heard coming. He was in a plain jacket, no colors. The deliberate absence of his vest said something on its own. He looked at her. She looked at him. You'd better come in, she said. Coffee? Please, he said. He sat at her kitchen table. She put the kettle on. Neither of them spoke until the coffee was poured. Grease wrapped his hands around the mug. He was a big man, roughed up by decades of a specific kind of life. His knuckles had old scars. His face was weathered in the way of someone who has spent most of his life outdoors, and none of it gently. But right now he looked like a man who is trying to figure out how to begin. You were in Flagstaff, he said finally. 1985, yes, Mag said. The Outstads chapter, yes. He nodded slowly. I wasn't there. But I knew men who were. I heard the story later. Took me years to hear it complete. He looked at her. They never understood what happened, how it happened. One day they had 30 members in full operation. 6 weeks later, nothing. Nobody arrested, nobody hurt. Just, he made a slow gesture with one hand. Smoke dissipating, Mag drank her coffee. Who are you really, he said. It was the same question he'd asked Tommy earlier, but different now, quieter. Genuinely wanting to know, she set her mug down. I'm a woman who grew up the hard way, she said, and learned some things along the way that turned out to be useful. The patch, he said. The one from... Don't say it out loud, she said. Not yet, he stopped. She looked at him steadily. Why did you come here tonight, Eddie? He was quiet for a moment, turned his mug in his hands. An old habit. Something to do when the thinking is hard because I'm 61 years old, he said, and I'm tired. And I've seen a lot of things go badly when they didn't have to. And I saw Tommy's face when you left that bar today, and I know what that face means. It means things are going to get worse before they get better. He paused. And I thought maybe, if you're who I think you might be, you'd want to know what I know. Mag studied him. What do you know, Eddie? I know Tommy's not here just for the town, he said. There's money moving through here, has been for 3 months. Small amounts. Laundering, building the structure, the bar's just the front. The real operation is bigger. Phoenix money. Connected to some people in the financial district who don't look like they'd know a motorcycle from a bicycle. Mag nodded. She'd suspected that. But it was useful to hear it confirmed, and I know. Grease continued more slowly. 2 weeks ago, Tommy had a meeting with a lawyer from Scottsdale. They talked for 3 hours. After that, Tommy made some phone calls. He's moving faster than he originally planned. Something has changed on his end. Do you know what? Not exactly. He looked at her. But he's got a deadline. Something has to be in place by end of the month. Mag sat with that for a moment. Why are you telling me this? She said. You've been with Tommy for, what, 8 years? 11, he said. 11 years. You've seen things. You've been part of things. And now you're sitting in a stranger's kitchen telling her what you know. She kept her voice even. Non-judgmental. Why? Grease was quiet for a long time. Because there's a girl working at that diner, he said slowly. And she's scared. She's not the kind of person who should be scared on account of something we did. He looked at his hands. I've let a lot of things go in my life. Made a lot of choices I can't unmake. But you get to a certain age and you start to ask yourself what the whole thing added up to. He looked at her. I don't like the answer I've been coming up with. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, the Arizona night was immense and dark and full of stars. Mag looked at him for a long time, reading him the way she'd read people for 40 years. Looking for the angles, the hidden agendas, the small tells that meant a person was playing a role. She didn't find them. What she found was something more ordinary and more rare. Genuinely, finally ashamed. All right, Eddie, she said. She stood up. Walked to the living room. Came back, set something on the table between them. A photograph, old. A group of women on motorcycles, desert landscape behind them. Maybe 15 women. Confident. Serious. A banner in the background with a logo, a black widow spider wearing a small crown. Greased at it for a long time. That's Albuquerque, he said. 1981 or 82. 1982, Mag said. He pointed slowly to a figure in the second row. Young, dark hair. Something in her posture that matched the woman sitting across from him now. That's you, Yes, he sat back. Then you're the one who... I'm the one, she said. Yes, another silence. The patch is real, he said quietly. More to himself than to her. The patch is real, she confirmed. He looked at her. Something in his face had changed. Not fear exactly, more like a recalibration. Like a man who thought he understood the room he was in and has just realized the room is significantly larger than he thought. "What are you going to do?" he said. "I'm going to think," she said. "And then I'm going to do what needs to be done." She picked up the photo first. "What?" "The young man who's been collecting from Danny Shaw. Rides a Sportster. Tattoo on his left forearm. They call him Loco." Grease nodded. "What's his real name?" Grease frowned. "Cole. Cole Maddox. He's been with us about a year." He paused. "He's young. He's not a bad kid, is the thing. He's not like some of the others." Mag filed that. "Go home, Eddie," she said. "Don't tell Tommy you came here. Don't change anything about how you act around him. And if I need you, I'll find you." "How will you?" "I'll find you," she said again. He stood up. Looked at her one more time. "I heard a story once, Glenn's," he said, "about a chapter in Flagstaff. How they didn't understand what happened to them. How it came apart like something had just quietly dissolved the glue." "That's a good way to put it," Mag said. "The story went that there was a woman behind it. Didn't fire a single shot. Didn't throw a single punch." He shook his head. "I never entirely believed it." "Good night, Eddie," she said. He nodded. Went to the back door, opened it. Paused. "For what it's worth," he said, not turning around. "I'm glad you're here." The door closed. His footsteps faded. Mag stood in her kitchen. Still. Quiet. Then she walked to the garage. She unlocked the garage door, stepped into the dark, found the light switch. The fluorescent overhead hummed to life, steady and white. The Harley stood under its tarp. The chest sat in the corner. She walked to the chest, crouched down, took the key from her pocket, and this time she turned it. The lock released with a clean click. She'd always kept it oiled. She opened the lid. The smell that came up was leather and time. Old things. Things from before. On top, folded with careful precision, a black leather vest, worn through decades of weather and road and years, but maintained. No cracking, no dryness. She'd kept it conditioned even under the fold. She lifted it out, held it up. Under the garage light, the patches showed clearly. Rocker on top, Widow's Road. Rocker on bottom, Suit West. And in the center, the main patch she had designed herself in a kitchen in its Albuquerque in the winter of 1977. A black widow spider, anatomically precise, wearing a small iron crown. Below the main patch, on the left chest, a small hand-sewn addition. Not a standard patch, just fabric and thread in someone's careful hand. A rectangle no bigger than a playing card. She turned the vest over. Inside, on the lining, in faded but still legible pen, for the ones who can't speak for themselves. R.C. Ray had written it the day they agreed to dissolve Black Widow publicly. December 1993. He had disappeared into the garage for an hour and come back with this. The vest, and those words inside it, he hadn't explained. He'd just held it out to her. "So you remember why?" he'd said. That was all. She pressed two fingers lightly to the letters. Then she turned the vest right side out again. Stood up, looked at it for a long time. There is a difference between the person you were and the person you are. 30 years is long enough to become someone genuinely different. She had not been pretending. These 11 years in Ridgecrest, the garden, the casseroles, the morning coffee, the quiet life. Those were real. She had wanted them, needed them, after everything. Ray's death had taken something out of her. Carol's had taken more. But she looked at the vest, and she understood something that she had been moving towards since yesterday morning at the diner. Since she'd watched Tommy Briggs walk through that door and look at Danny's town like it was already his. She didn't put the vest on yet. She folded it carefully over her arm. Walked to the Harley. Pulled the tarp back with her free hand. The bike sat in the clean garage light. Perfect. Ready, a machine that had never stopped being what it was even under 4 years of canvas. She put her hand on the fuel tank. Cold steel. "Solid. All right, Ray," she said softly. She wasn't talking to a ghost. She was talking to a promise. She covered the bike again, turned off the light, went back inside. She sat at the kitchen table, got out a small notebook, the kind with a cardboard cover like a schoolchild's. This one was old, the cover worn, the corners soft. She opened to a blank page, wrote 2 words at the top, "What I know," and began to write. She wrote for 40 minutes. Everything Grease had told her, everything she'd observed herself. Tommy's timeline, the lawyer from Scottsdale, the money structure, the end-of-month deadline, Danny's situation, Cole Maddox, young, not bad, recruited too recently to be fully committed. She wrote what she didn't yet know, the size of the Phoenix money, the identity of the financial backers, the exact nature of what Tommy needed the town for. She wrote what she needed, then she set the pen down. Looked at the list. It wasn't enough yet, not quite. She needed one thing she didn't have. She needed to get inside the structure. Not physically, informationally. She needed to know the finances. She knew who could do that. She picked up her phone, scrolled to a number she had not called in 4 years, looked at it for a long moment, then she put the phone down. Not yet. Not tonight. There were steps to this. There had always been steps. Patience was not passivity. Patience was preparation. She made one more cup of tea, sat at the window. The desert night was fully dark now, vast and clear. Stars in extraordinary numbers. The kind of sky you couldn't see in cities. Ray had loved this sky. Hard to feel like your problems are the biggest thing in the world, he used to say, looking up at it, when you can see how much room there is. She thought about Danny Shaw. 29 years old. A good mind. A hard year. A mother who'd loved her fiercely and asked one last favor of her oldest friend. She thought about Ridgecrest. 3,000 people who were tired, who had forgotten how to fight back, or maybe had never had anyone show them how. She thought about Tommy Briggs, rolling into town on 22 bikes, looking at everything with those pale blue purchasing eyes. She thought about Eddie Voss sitting at her kitchen table, 61 years old and tired in a way that went deeper than sleep would fix. I don't like the answer I've been coming up with. She understood that there comes a point, if you live long enough and pay attention, where you can't keep separating yourself from what happens around you, where the fact of a situation becomes a kind of assignment, not dramatic, not chosen. Just here you are, here it is, what are you going to do? She'd been here before. She drained her tea, set the cup in the sink, turned off the kitchen light. On the way to bed, she passed the hall table, set the folded vest on it, where she'd see it first thing in the morning. Morning came in blue and gold over the Arizona hills. Mag was up before the light had fully arrived.
Coffee on.
She sat at the kitchen table with her notebook and reviewed what she'd written the night before. Added 2 things she'd thought of in the night. 7:30, she walked to the diner. Dorothy raised an eyebrow when she came in. Twice in 2 days, Dorothy said. Habit, Mag said. She sat in her usual corner. Danny was on shift. Girl brought her coffee without being asked. She always did. And lingered for a half second, eyes asking a question. Mag gave her the smallest nod. I'm working on it. You're okay. Danny's shoulders dropped a fraction. She went back to her tables. At 8:15, the door opened and 3 of Tommy's men came in. Not Tommy, just the men. They sat at the counter, ordered breakfast loud enough that people noticed, looked around with the easy ownership of people who have been told the place is already theirs. Mag read her newspaper. At 8:50, one of them, young, wearing his colors fully, wanting to be seen, came and stood at the edge of her table. Nice morning, he said. It is, she agreed. You were at the Iron Horse yesterday. You talked to Mr. Briggs. I had a cup of coffee there, yes. Mr. Briggs wanted me to tell you that the offer stands. The girl can come talk to him directly and work something out. Mag folded her newspaper neatly, set it on the table, looked up at the young man. He was maybe 25. Something behind the swagger, not comfortable in his own performance yet. She'd seen that before too. Tell Mr. Briggs thank you, she said pleasantly, and tell him I'll be in touch when I'm ready. The young man blinked. When I'm ready was not what he'd expected. I don't think you understand. Son, her voice was still pleasant, still quiet. I've been having breakfast at this table since before you could ride. I'm going to finish my coffee, and then I'm going to go about my day. You should go about yours. He stood there for one more moment. Then he went back to the counter across the room. Dorothy caught Mag's eye. A look of quiet astonishment. Mag picked up her coffee. On her way home, she stopped at the hardware store. Pete Sandoval was behind the counter, a big man, 67 years old, with the particular stillness of someone who has been through difficult things and come out the other side with most of his pieces intact. Pete and Mag had an understanding that required few words. He'd been in Ridgecrest 15 years to her 11. They'd found each other's level early, recognized something in each other. Morning, Pete, she said. Mag. He was sharpening a pencil for no particular reason. You look like you're thinking. I'm always thinking. You look like you're thinking about something specific. She leaned on the counter. Those men who came to see you last week, the ones who left you the paper. Pete's face changed slightly. Who told you about that? Nobody told me. I saw you put something in your jacket when they left. You always keep your jacket on the hook. You only put things in your jacket when you don't want them on your counter. He looked at her. Didn't smile. But something around his eyes warmed. They want to use the back lot, he said, for storage. Long term. They weren't specific about what kind of storage. Set down the pencils. They want an answer by Friday. What answer were you considering? I was considering, he said slowly, that I'm 67 years old and I fought in a war and I came home and I built this store with my hands and nobody who rolls into my town on a motorcycle tells me what to do with my back lot. Mag nodded once. Clean and direct. Good answer, she said. I just needed to say it to someone, he said. To make sure it still sounded right out loud. It does. She straightened up. Pete, if I ask you for something in the next few days, a favor, something specific, will you trust me that I have a reason? He looked at her steadily. I've trusted you for 11 years, he said. I don't see a reason to stop now, she nodded. Started for the door, Mag, he said. She stopped. What are you going to do? She thought about that. What needs to be done, she said. The way I know how to do it, he thought about that. Nodded. All right, he said. You need anything, you know where I am. She walked out into the morning light back on Sycamore Street, her house, her sunflowers. She stood in the hallway for a moment. The vest was on the table where she'd left it. She picked it up, carried it to the garage, hung it on a hook near the workbench where she could see it while she worked. Then she got out her tools, pulled the tarp off the Harley, and began working on the engine. Not because it needed much, she'd kept it well, but because working on an engine is thinking made physical, because her hands needed something to do while her mind ran through the steps. The plan was forming. It was not a simple plan. Simple plans were for simple problems, and this was not a simple problem. Tommy Briggs was not a man who would back down from a direct challenge, and she was one woman, 68 years old, in a town where the people were tired and scared, but she had done more with less. She had an old network that was never as gone as it appeared to be. She had information and she knew how to get more. She had time, not infinite time, but enough. Tommy's deadline was end of the month. She had 12 days, and she had something else, something harder to quantify but no less real. She'd spent 30 years learning how the people around her thought, how organizations built on fear and money and the threat of violence sustained themselves, and how they came apart. They came apart the same way every time, from the inside. When the people within them lost faith, when the information moved in the wrong direction, when the foundations turned out to be less solid than they appeared. You didn't beat a structure like Tommy's by attacking it from the outside. You found the cracks. You helped them widen. You were patient. She worked on the engine for 2 hours. Then she sat on the garage stool, wiped her hands on a rag, looked at the vest on the hook, at the patch, at the small spider with her crown. Then she picked up her phone, scrolled to the number she hadn't called in 4 years. This time she dialed. 3 rings, a woman's voice, measured, calm. The voice of someone who had been expecting this call for some time. Well, the voice said, I was starting to wonder, Virginia, Mag said. I need you. A small pause. Mag looked at there by Thursday. Use the back roads, she said. Use the back roads, she'd said. And don't come in flashy, she, Mag, a sound that was almost a laugh. When have I ever come in flashy? Thursday, Mag said. Thursday. Virginia confirmed. Mag ended the call, stood up, put on her jacket, picked up her keys. She had a town to take back, and she knew exactly where to start. Virginia Strand arrived on Thursday. Not flashy. True to her word, a 10-year-old Buick sedan, dusty from the highway, parked 2 streets over from Sycamore. She walked the rest of the way with a rolling carry-on and a canvas tote bag, and the unhurried stride of a woman who had somewhere to be and intended to get there without announcing herself. 65 years old. Silver hair cut short and practical. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like someone's favorite aunt. The kind who remembered birthdays and gave good advice and knew exactly how much wine was appropriate for a Tuesday. She was also the finest forensic accountant Mag had ever known. Mag opened the door before she knocked. They looked at each other for a moment, the way old friends do, taking inventory, checking for what the years had added and what they'd taken. You look good, Virginia said. You look tired, Mag said. Drove from Tucson at 5 in the morning. Virginia stepped inside, set down her bag. Nobody looks good at 5 in the morning. Mag made coffee. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Grease had sat 4 nights before, same table where Danny had told her things she'd already known. Virginia set her mug down without drinking from it. Already thinking, tell me everything, she said. Mag told her. Virginia listened the way she always had, completely still, eyes slightly unfocused, the look of someone filing information in real time. She didn't interrupt, didn't write anything down. She never wrote anything down during a briefing. She said it interfered with listening. When Mag finished, Virginia was quiet for a moment. End of month, she said. That's what Grease told me. 10, as of this morning, Virginia nodded slowly. The Scottsdale lawyer. Do you have a name? Not yet. I'll need one. Virginia set down her mug. If Tommy is moving money through this town, there's a structure. An LLC, probably more than one. Real estate entity, maybe. Something that looks legitimate from the outside. She paused, Give me 48 hours. You'll need access, I'll need internet access and the county recorder's office records, both of which are public. And I'll need whatever Eddie Voss is willing to tell me about the financial side. Virginia looked at her. Can I talk to him? Not yet. Let me prepare him first, all right. Virginia stood up, stretched. I'm going to need a place to work that isn't your kitchen table. Mag showed her to the spare room. Small but organized, good light, a desk Ray had built. Virginia set up her laptop with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this many times in many places. At the door, Mag paused. Virginia, she said. Thank you for coming. Virginia didn't look up from her screen. You called. Of course I came. A brief pause. You should have called sooner. Mag said nothing. 4 years, Mag, I know. Carol would say the same thing. I know that too. Virginia looked at her then. Something in her face that was not quite sympathy and not quite reproach. Something older than both of those things. We're here now, she said. Let's get to work. That same evening, Joanne Whitfield called to say she was 2 hours out. Joanne was 70 years old and had spent 30 of them as an investigative reporter for the Arizona Republic before retiring 5 years ago. She had the voice of someone who had conducted 10,000 interviews and learned exactly how much silence to let sit before the other person filled it with something useful. She arrived at 9, drove a rental. Dark blue, nondescript. Rental? Mag said. My car has a bumper sticker, Joanne said. Old habit. Don't drive anything identifiable when you're working a story. This isn't a story, Mag said. Not yet. Everything is a story eventually, Joanne said. That's not cynicism. That's just how things work. She came inside. Spare room, Joanne nodded, set her bag down. And the third, Ruth drives up tomorrow. Ruth Albright. 63 years old. 35 years as a clerk in the federal court system. She knew procedure the way other people knew their own names. Without effort, without hesitation. She knew which judges signed what. She knew how documents moved. She knew the difference between a case that was going somewhere and one that was going to sit in a filing cabinet until everyone involved was too old to care. 3 women. 3 specific kinds of knowledge. None of them looked like what they were. That had always been the point. Mag told Joanne what she'd told Virginia. Joanne listened differently, actively, leaning forward, occasionally raising one finger, something she'd return to. When Mag finished, Joanne said, The Phoenix money. I have a contact at the FBI's Phoenix field office. Woman named Harlan. She worked organized crime for 15 years. She's in financial crimes now. We've crossed paths, she paused. I'd want more before I went to her. She'll need something solid. Virginia's working on the financial structure, Mag said. Give her 48 hours and the local angle? The people Tommy has been pressuring? I'm working on that. Joanne looked at her steadily. How many people in this town know what's happening? Most of them feel it, Mag said. Not many have named it. We should change that. Carefully, Joanne reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small recorder. Old model, she preferred them. I want to talk to Dorothy. And to this Pete Sandoval. If they're willing, I'll arrange it. Mag paused. Joanne, nothing public yet? Nothing that Tommy can see coming. I know the rules, Joanne said mildly. I helped write them. Ruth arrived Friday morning. Quiet, careful. She drove her own car, a 10-year-old Civic, unremarkable in every way, and came to the back door, not the front. Old instinct, Ruth was the smallest of them. Precise in the way of someone who had spent decades in environments where a misplaced comma could change the meaning of a document. She shook Mag's hand with a firm grip and said, What do you need from the legal side? I need to know, Mag said, what it would take to get a federal grand jury to look at money laundering through a small Arizona town. Ruth sat down, folded her hands on the table. Walk me through what you have, she said. The house on Sycamore Street had become something, 4 women around a kitchen table, a laptop open in the spare room running searches at midnight, a legal pad covered in Joanne's handwriting, Ruth's careful annotated timeline of what Tommy's operation would need to do to be federally prosecutable. From the outside, it looked like nothing. An older woman's house on a quiet street. Visitors. Probably family. That too had always been the point. Saturday morning. 4 days after Virginia arrived, Mag was in the garage when Grease found her. She'd left the side door unlatched. A small signal, he'd understood it. She'd seen him walk past the house twice the day before, checking. He came around to the side. Twice. She said, come in. He looked different without his colors. She'd only seen him twice now, both times in plain clothes. He was a different person without the vest. Less performance. More man. She was working on the Harley. The tarp was off. She'd spent the morning on the carburetor. Not because it needed it. but because it was the kind of task that required just enough concentration to keep the surface of her mind occupied while the deeper levels worked. Grease stood at the door for a moment. Looking at the shovelhead, 1979, he said, "Shovelhead, original everything." He came in slowly. The way a person enters a space that they understand is significant. He crouched down beside the bike, looked at the engine. "My first bike was a '77 Shovelhead," he said. "Bought it with 7 months of dishwasher wages. Took me 2 years to get it running right." A pause. "Sold it in 1991. Still think about it sometimes. You never forget the first one," Mag said. He straightened up. Looked at her. "Tommy knows you came to the bar," he said. "He's been asking questions. He's got someone looking into you." "I expected that. He's not finding much." "Which is making him more curious, not less." Mag nodded. She wiped her hands on the rag. Sat on the stool. "Tell me something, Eddie." "The man who gave Danny Shaw the loan." Cole Maddox? Grease's expression shifted slightly. "What about him? How did he get recruited?" Grease thought about it. "About 14 months ago. Tommy was moving through Tucson. Cole was working at a garage there. Good mechanic. Tommy liked him." He paused. Kid didn't have much going on. No family close by. I think he was lonely. Truth be told. The club gave him people. "Has he done anything violent?" "Not that I've seen." Grease was careful with this. "He runs errands. Delivers. He's not been asked to." He stopped. "No, nothing violent." Mag filed this, Eddie. She said, "I need to ask you something directly." "All right. The financial side. The money moving through Ridgecrest. Do you have access to the books?" He was quiet for a moment. Looked at his hands. "I'm not the money person," he said. "Tommy keeps that tight. But I've seen things. Been in the room for some conversations." He paused. "There are 2 businesses. The bar is one. The other is a supply company. Registered in Phoenix, I think, or Scottsdale. I don't know the name. But I know there's a woman who comes in once a week and picks up a briefcase. Always the same woman. Drives a silver Lexus. What day? Tuesdays. Late morning. Tuesday. 3 days away." "One more thing," Mag said, "and I need you to be honest with me. I'll try. Is there anything Tommy has on you? Any leverage?" Grease was very still, because if there is, Mag continued, even and steady, "I need to know it now. Before we go further. Because if he has something he can use, he will use it. And I need to know where the weak points are." Silence. Long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "There's a situation from 2019 in Flagstaff." Ironically, he kept his eyes on the garage floor. "Nothing violent. But something I'm not proud of. Tommy's been holding it loosely. Not a threat. More like a reminder." "What kind of situation?" he told her. It took less than 2 minutes. When he finished, the garage was quiet. Mag looked at him. She had heard worse. Much worse. She'd built a network over 15 years on the premise that people's worst moments did not have to define their whole accounting. "Here's what I want you to understand," she said. "What you did in 2019, that's yours. That's your weight to carry. Not going to pretend it doesn't exist." She paused. "But it doesn't have to be a chain. What you do now is also part of the accounting." He looked at her. "You've heard this speech before," he said. Not accusatory, just recognizing. "I've given it before," she said. A long breath out. "Something releasing, all right," he said. "What do you need?" "I need you to find out the name of the supply company. And the name of the Scottsdale lawyer. I can do that. And Eddie," she held his gaze, "don't take any risks that aren't necessary. You're more useful to me careful than brave." He almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." He left the way he'd come. Side door. Quiet. Mag turned back to the Harley. She picked up her wrench, put it down. Stood up. Walked to the hook where the vest hung. Lifted it off. Turned it over. Inside. Ray's handwriting. For the ones who can't speak for themselves, she had told Grease the truth about the accounting. The way a life adds up. The way you don't get to subtract the bad parts. You just get to keep adding to the other side of the ledger. Keep going. Keep doing the right thing. See what the total comes to in the end. Ray had understood that better than anyone. He'd had his own ledger, his own weights and measures. She hadn't known all of it, not until after. A man who worked quietly and without fanfare on the side of people who couldn't help themselves. No grand gestures, just consistent, careful, unglamorous effort. "You don't need people to know you did the right thing," he'd said once. "You just need to know." She put the vest back on the hook, went inside to see what Virginia had found. Virginia had been awake since 4. This was not unusual for her during a working stretch. She functioned on coffee and the particular energy of a problem that wanted solving. Mag had seen it before, the way Virginia's eyes changed when she was deep in a financial maze, focused to a point. Everything else irrelevant. She had papers spread across the spare room desk and the floor around it, printed documents from the county recorder's office, Corporate filing records from the Arizona Corporation Commission. Available public. Property records. She'd done all of this through public access. No hacking, no illegal access. Virginia had never needed those tools. The legal ones, applied by someone who knew how to read them, were sufficient. Mag brought her coffee. Stood in the doorway. "Tell me," she said. Virginia pointed to a document on the left side of the desk. Ridgecrest Iron Horse LLC, registered 4 months ago, listed business, food and beverage. Principal, a man named Dale Mercer. She paused. Dale Mercer does not appear to have a driver's license, a known address, or any social media presence. He exists exactly as much as he needs to on paper. Shell name, Mag said. Classic. Virginia pointed to a second document. Southwest Provision Supply, Inc., registered in Scottsdale, 8 months ago. Listed business, wholesale distribution of food service supplies. Principal, a woman named Tara Briggs. Mag raised an eyebrow. Tommy's wife, Virginia said. She know what she's attached to? Can't say. Could be willing, could be unaware. Wouldn't be the first time a name got used without full understanding. Virginia tapped the document. This is the one doing the moving. I traced 3 transfers from an account registered to Southwest Provision into what looks like a legitimate commercial real estate entity in Phoenix. Mid-5 figures each. Quarterly. Laundering through the real estate. Building the structure, Virginia said. This isn't the full machine. This is the foundation. Whatever Tommy is setting up in Ridgecrest, the money has been moving for 8 months already. Ridgecrest is the next layer. She paused. He needs a physical location here. Something with a plausible business reason to be moving cash. The hardware store, Mag said. Pete's back lot. Or something like it. A cash business is better. Bar, diner, garage. Virginia looked at her. Has he approached anyone who runs something like that? I'll find out, Virginia nodded. Picked up another paper. The lawyer from Scottsdale. His name is Garrett Finch. He has a practice specializing in commercial real estate and corporate structuring. His firm has a history. Nothing provable but a pattern. 3 clients in the past 6 years who've ended up being investigated for financial crimes. He's never been charged. He knows how close to the line to walk, Mag said. He knows exactly how close. Virginia set the paper down. This is enough to take to Harlan, Joanne's contact at the FBI. It's not a case yet, but it's enough to open a door. Mag looked at the spread of documents, a web visible only to someone who knew how to read the threads. How solid is it, she said. Solid enough that a good financial crimes investigator would find it interesting. Not solid enough to arrest anyone yet. Virginia looked at her. We need the internal records. The actual books. Grease's words came back to her. Tuesday, silver Alexis. I may have a way to get them, Mag said. Virginia studied her. How risky. Not physically, but it needs to happen without Tommy knowing. Then be careful, Virginia said. If he figures out the books are being accessed, he won't figure it out from my end, Mag said. The risk is from his end. Whether anyone inside talks, Virginia nodded. Looked back at her screen. I need 1 more day on the property records, she said. There's something in the Phoenix real estate entity I haven't fully untangled yet. Take what you need, Mag said. She went back to the kitchen. Sat down. Called Grease. He answered the second ring. Supply company, she said. Southwest Provision Supply. Registered to Tara Briggs. A pause. How did you? That's not the question, Mag said. The question is, the woman with the silver Lexus. Does she come to the bar or to a different location? She comes to the bar, Grease said. Goes into the back office. Tommy's in there with her for about 30 minutes. She leaves with a briefcase. Same briefcase each time. She brings it. Does she ever leave with anything else? He thought. A USB drive. Tommy hands it to her. I've seen it twice. Mag was quiet for a moment. Financial records on a drive, transferred weekly. Old-fashioned in some ways. Effective in others, Eddie. I need you to do something Monday night. It can't look deliberate. To look like an accident. What kind of accident? She told him. He was quiet. Can you do that? She said. Yeah, he said slowly. Yeah, I can do that. And nobody gets hurt. Nobody gets hurt, he confirmed. Good, she said. Go about your Sunday normally. I'll contact you Monday afternoon. She ended the call, sat still for a moment, then she got up. Went to the garage, put on her work gloves. There was more to do on the Harley. Sunday night. Mag's house was quiet, Virginia asleep in the spare room. Joanne at the motel on the highway. She'd wanted her own space. Always had. Ruth was staying with a friend in the next town, driving in each morning. The arrangement was deliberate. Don't cluster. Don't make a pattern visible from the outside. At 2 in the morning, Mag's phone lit up, unknown number. She answered. Miss Calloway, young voice. Strained. It's Cole Maddox. She sat up. Turned on the lamp. Cole, she said. Steady. How did you get this number? Eddie Voss. He gave it to me, he said. The voice caught. He said if something happened I should call you. What's happened? A pause. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter. Younger than his age. I just came from Danny Shaw's place, he said. Tommy sent me to. He stopped. He wanted me to go and make it clear to her that the timeline had moved up, that she needed to resolve things by Wednesday, not next week. Wednesday, Mag kept her voice even. And I went. I knocked on her door. She answered. She was clearly scared when she saw me, and a longer pause. I couldn't do it. I told her to lock her door and not answer it for anyone she didn't recognize. I told her things were going to get worse before they got better. I told her to trust you. Mag was quiet for a moment. Does Tommy know you went soft, she said. Not yet. I told him she didn't answer the door, that the place looked empty. He might check. I don't know. Where are you now? Parking lot of the gas station on Route 9. In my truck. Stay there. Don't go back to the bar tonight. Can you call in sick tomorrow? Something believable? Yeah, I've done it before. Do that. And Cole, are you safe where you are tonight? I think so. Yeah, there's a woman named Virginia staying at my house. If anything feels wrong, you call this number. She read him Virginia's number. Say you're Eddie's contact. She'll know what to do. Okay. A breath, Miss Calloway. I need to tell you something else. She waited. Tommy knows you're not just a local woman, he said. He's been finding out more about you. He talked to someone in Phoenix today, I don't know who. After the call, he was different, quieter. He told 2 of his guys to follow you. Starting tomorrow, Mag absorbed this. All right, she said. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do? My job, she said. Go home, get some sleep. Don't do anything that draws attention. She ended the call, sat in the lamplight. Tommy was moving faster, whether from instinct or he was accelerating his timeline. That changed things. Not the plan, the pace. She got up, went to the kitchen, made tea she didn't particularly want. Stood at the window. In 30 years of doing this work, the years of Black Widow, the careful years, the years since, she had learned one thing above all others. The moment an adversary starts moving faster than planned, it means one of 2 things. Either they feel threatened, or they have a deadline they haven't told anyone about. Either way, it meant pressure. She thought about Danny, locked in her apartment on a Sunday night, scared. 29 years old with a grief she was still carrying and a mistake she was still paying for. She thought about Carol, the weight of a deathbed promise, how it settled in the chest, how it didn't lift. She went back to bed, did not sleep for a long time. Monday afternoon. Fag's kitchen. The call came from Hank Dooley at 3. Mag, his voice was wrong. She heard it immediately. The specific flatness of a man who has decided to do something difficult and is doing it before he loses his nerve. Hank, she said, I need to come over. Come now, she said. He was there in 10 minutes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in longer than one night. She'd known Hank Dooley for 11 years, had watched him be a decent sheriff in a town that didn't ask much of its law enforcement. Quiet, fair, honest in the way that didn't require testing. He sat down. Didn't take the coffee she offered. I've done something I can't undo, he said. Mag sat across from him. Said nothing. Tommy Briggs, Hank said. He came to see me about a month ago, before he moved in with the full group. He came alone. Very polite. We had coffee. Hank looked at his hands. He had information about something that happened 6 years ago. Something involving department funds. He paused. It wasn't what it looked like at the time, but it looked bad. And the way he presented it, he didn't threaten me. He just laid it out and said he hoped we could have a cooperative relationship going forward. And, Mag said, Hank's jaw tightened. 2 weeks ago, he asked me something specific. He asked whether I'd heard anything about outside people coming to Ridgecrest. Whether there was any unusual activity he should know about. The room was very still. He said it casually. Hank continued, just conversation. But I knew what he was asking. And what did you tell him? Hank looked at her directly. The effort it took was visible. I told him about Virginia, he said. I'd seen her car parked near your house. I didn't know her name. But I described her. He swallowed. Then 2 days later I told him Joanne Whitfield was in town. Because he asked again and he stopped. I'm sorry, Mag. Mag sat still. She had suspected this, not Hank specifically, but a leak of some kind. Tommy knowing too quickly, moving too accurately. She'd calculated for it. She had not told Hank about Ruth. She had not told him about the plan for Monday night with Grease. She had not told him about Cole. She had trusted him with what she could afford to have leaked, but she had hoped she was wrong. Said he'd keep the information about the department funds quiet, Hank said. That's what he offered. Which isn't nothing, Mag. If that came out now, my pension. He stopped himself, shook his head. But I know that's not enough of a reason. I just need to say it out loud. I hear you, Mag said. I'm not asking you to understand, she said. But I understand it. He nodded. Once. Was absorbed that. What do you need from me now? He said. Nothing yet. Don't change how you act around Tommy. Don't signal that you've told me. And Hank? She waited until he looked at her. If you want to be useful. If you want the other side of the ledger to have something on it. Think about what you have. What you've seen, heard, been told in the past month. Whether any of it was documented anywhere. He looked at her. Think about it, she said. That's all I'm asking. For now, he left. Mag sat at the table for a few minutes. Then she went to the spare room. Virginia looked up from her screen. He told him about us, Mag said. Virginia didn't look surprised. How much? Enough that Tommy knows we're here. Not enough to know what we're doing. Does it change the Monday night plan? No, Mag said. It means we move faster after. Once we have the books, we don't sit on them. We go to Harlan at the FBI directly. Same day, Virginia turned back to her screen. I'll be ready, Monday night. Just after 10, Eddie Voss was at the Iron Horse. He'd come back after his sick day. Told Tommy his stomach had been bad. Tommy had barely looked at him. He was distracted. On his phone more than usual, shorter with everyone, moving faster. Like Cole had said, at 10:15, the generator in the backlot failed. Not spectacularly, just a quiet shutdown. The lights in the back section of the bar flickered and died. The refrigeration units in the back went dark, Tommy swore. Sent 2 men to look at it. In the resulting shuffle, people moving around, flashlights, everyone's attention directed outward. Eddie moved into the back office. 30 seconds. Long enough to find the USB drive in the middle drawer of Tommy's desk, where it always lived between Tuesday transfers. Long enough to copy it onto the identical drive he carried in his left jacket pocket. Long enough to put the original back. He was back on his bar stool when the generator came back on. He'd done it before the new copy could be discovered. The duplicate drive was in his pocket, and then, on a bathroom break 5 minutes later, in the hidden compartment of his truck, he texted Miggs one word, done. Mag read it in her kitchen, breathed, texted back, leave it at the back door tonight. Don't come in 11:40. She heard his truck, a pause. The sound of it leaving, she waited 5 minutes, then went to the back door, a small cloth bag hanging from the door handle. Inside, a USB drive. She brought it inside, handed it to Virginia without a word. Virginia plugged it in. 40 minutes later, she sat back in her chair. Mag, she said. Mag came to the doorway. This is enough, Virginia said. This is more than enough. 3 years of records, 2 sets of books. The real numbers and the laundered numbers. She looked up. This isn't just Ridgecrest. This goes back to Phoenix. This connects to the real estate entity in Scottsdale. This, she shook her head. Harlan is going to want this very much. Mag looked at the screen. Can you be ready to send it tomorrow? She said. I can be ready in an hour, Virginia said. Tomorrow morning, Mag said. I want Joanne to make the call to Harlan personally, and I want Ruth to confirm the jurisdiction before we do. Virginia nodded, looked at the screen again. Then at Mag, we need to talk about one more thing, she said. Tell me, Tommy is going to find out the drive was accessed. Maybe not immediately, but within a week when Tara's woman comes on Tuesday to do the transfer. The books will be different from what Tommy expects. I know, Mag said, which means after tomorrow things may move very fast and not entirely on our timeline. I know that too. Virginia looked at her steadily. Are you ready for that? Mag thought about the vest hanging in the garage, about Ray's handwriting on the inside, about Danny's face that evening at the dinner table, shoulders dropping with relief, about Pete Sandoval sharpening a pencil for no reason and saying, I built this with my hands, about Carol, about a promise. Yes, she said. Tuesday morning, 6:45. Mag was in the kitchen when she heard it, soft, 2 knocks. Back, she went to it, looked through the window. Cole Maddox stood on the step, plain jacket, no colors. He had a cut above his left eyebrow, new, already starting to crust. His jaw was tense with the specific tension of someone holding pain still. She opened the door, not asking to come in, waiting to be invited or turned away. That small thing said something about him. Come in, she said. He sat at the kitchen table. She put water on. Got the first aid kit from the cabinet. What happened, she said. Tommy found out I'd been to Danny's apartment. He held still while she looked at the cut. Not deep enough to need stitches. She cleaned it, applied a butterfly strip. He didn't flinch. Someone saw my truck on her street. Told Tommy this morning he hit you. He didn't do it himself. He had one of the others do it. A pause. A man named Burkett. He's been with Tommy since Phoenix. He doesn't ask questions. Cole's voice was flat. It's the kind of man Tommy keeps close. I understood, Mag said. She put the kit away, set tea in front of him. He wrapped his hands around the mug. Same gesture as the others. She noticed it. The way people hold warm things when they are cold inside. Can't go back there, he said. After this I know, she said. I don't have anywhere to. I know that too. She sat across from him. You're going to stay here today. Virginia is in the spare room. You'll take the couch. He looked at her, surprised, like he'd expected more conditions. Why, he said, not suspicious, genuinely asking. She looked at him, 28 years old, a good mechanic, according to Greece, no family close by. Recruited into something because it offered belonging and a paycheck, the way those things always recruited the same kind of person in every generation. Because your Aunt Carol asked me to look after her family, she said. And your Carol's family. He went very still. Something moved through his face. She watched it happen. Slow arrival of something he'd been keeping at a distance. Something about Carol Shaw, and a photograph given to a young man for a specific emergency, and a woman he'd been told to find. His eyes went bright. He didn't cry. He pressed his mouth together and looked at the table and breathed. She talked about you, he said. His voice was rough. When I was growing up. She said there was a woman, she never said your name, just a woman I trust, and that if I ever found myself in serious trouble, real trouble, I should find her. He paused. I didn't know she meant you. I didn't even know she knew anyone in Ridgecrest until I ended up here. Carol was careful, Mag said. She didn't tell people more than they needed. Was she like you, he said. Did she do what you do? Mag considered this. Carol was braver than me in some ways, she said. She didn't need the structure I needed. She just did what was right, wherever she was. With whatever she had, she paused. She would have been very unhappy with the choices you've made this past year, I know, he said. And she would have been very proud of the choices you made last night, and last week, and this morning. He nodded, pressed his lips together again. They sat in the kitchen for a while. Outside, the sunflowers moved in the early morning air. The light was low and gold after a while. Cole said, What happens now? Now, Mag said, We move to the next step. She stood up, went to the hallway, called to the spare room. Virginia, call Joanne. Tell her we're ready. Virginia appeared in the doorway, took in Cole at the table, took in the cut above his eye, took in the mug in his hands and the particular look of a person who has just found somewhere to land after a very long flight. She looked at Mag. Mag gave her the small nod that meant, I'll explain later. For now, he's one of ours. Virginia nodded back, went to make the call. Joanne reached Special Agent Diane Harlan at 9:15. She didn't explain everything on the phone. You didn't explain everything on the phone, she said. I have financial records and corporate documents relating to a money laundering structure operating out of Phoenix through a small Arizona town. I have a forensic accountant who can walk your team through it. And I have a source inside the organization. Harlan said, How solid? Joanne said Virginia Strand put it together. A pause. Harlan knew Virginia's name. Most serious financial crimes investigators in Arizona did. I can be there Thursday, Harlan said. Thursday, Joanne confirmed. She ended the call, came to the kitchen doorway. Mag was standing at the window. The sunflowers, the hill, the vast Arizona sky. Thursday, Joanne said. Mag nodded. 2 days. She turned to look at the people in her kitchen. Virginia with her papers, Cole with his tea and his cut eyebrow and his complicated accounting. Sound of Ruth on the phone in the spare room, checking something in the federal court records. 2 days. She thought of Tommy Briggs, pale blue eyes. The way he'd looked around Ridgecrest like it was already his. She thought of the Harley in the garage. Ready. Always ready. She thought of Ray. She picked up her coffee. All right, she said, to no one in particular. To all of them, let's finish this. Diane Harlan drove a government-issue sedan, gray, 4-door, the kind of car designed to be forgotten the moment it left your field of vision. She parked it on the street 2 blocks from Sycamore and walked the rest of the way. She told Mag something useful before the woman had spoken a single word. She was 53. Black hair going silver at the temples. The kind of face that had learned to reveal nothing without deciding to. She wore a dark blazer over a plain shirt and carried a leather folio under one arm. She shook Mag's hand at the door, firm, brief. No performance in it, Mrs. Calloway, she said. Mag said, Come in. Harlan came in, looked around the kitchen the way a person looks at a room when they're gathering information without appearing to. She noted Virginia at the table. Joanne standing by the window. Ruth with her annotated documents organized in a neat stack. Cole on the couch in the living room, within earshot but not in the room. She took it all in, said nothing about it. Sat down at the kitchen table. Virginia slid the financial documents across to her. Harlan opened her folio, set her own pen at an angle on the table, and began to read. Nobody spoke for 11 minutes. Then Harlan looked up at Virginia. Southwest Provision Supply, she said. The Scottsdale address. Is this the registered agent or the operating address? Registered agent, Virginia said. The actual operation appears to run through a secondary address in Tempe. It's in the third dom. Harlan found it. Red, the real estate entity in Phoenix, she said. Clearwater Holdings LLC. How many transfers? 9 documented in the records, spanning 14 months, amounts ranging from $42,000 to $78,000. Always below the federal reporting threshold individually. But the pattern, structuring, Harlan said. Not a question. Classic structuring, Virginia confirmed. Whoever set this up knows exactly what they're doing. Garrett Finch, Meg said. Harlan looked at her. You know the lawyer. Virginia found the connection. Joanne confirmed it through her own sources. Harlan looked at Joanne. Still have sources inside the Republic. I still have sources everywhere, Joanne said mildly. Retirement doesn't end relationships. Something moved briefly across Harlan's face. Not quite a smile. The suggestion of one. She looked back at the documents. The USB records, she said. The room was briefly quiet. They were provided by a source inside the organization, Mag said voluntarily. Without coercion, your source is someone who wants to cooperate, Mag said fully, and who has direct knowledge of the operation structure. Harlan looked at her. I'll need to speak with them. You will. But I want to understand something first. Mag kept her voice even. The cooperation agreement. What can you offer someone who's been on the periphery, not in leadership, not involved in any violent activity? Handled collections and logistics. Harlan studied her. That depends on what they can give us. They can give you the full operational structure, Mag said. Names, dates, locations, the Phoenix connection, the lawyer, the money chain. She paused. They can give you Tommy Briggs in a way that sticks. Harlan considered this for a long moment. Bring them in, she said. Mag turned toward the living room. Cole. He came in, stood at the edge of the kitchen. He'd cleaned up as much as the butterfly strip on his eyebrow allowed. He looked young, looked exactly as scared as he was, which Mag respected. People who pretended not to be scared in these moments were either very experienced or not paying attention. Cole was paying attention. Harlan looked at him. Looked at the cut. Sit down, she said, not unkindly. He sat. Tell me what you know, she said. Start from the beginning. Take your time. He started talking. It took 2 hours. Harlan asked questions the way she'd clearly asked thousands of them. Precise, unhurried. She let Cole finish his sentences before she responded. She circled back to things he'd said earlier, from different angles, testing for consistency. She found none of the inconsistencies that would have indicated fabrication. What Cole knew was significant. Not the full picture. He hadn't been trusted with the full picture, but the operational layer. Who moved what, when, and to whom? 3 names above Tommy in the Phoenix structure that hadn't appeared in Virginia's documents. Storage location outside Tempe used for things that didn't go on any books at all. Harlan wrote for a long time. When Cole finished, she looked at Mag. What you've brought, she said carefully, is the beginning of a case, not a finished one. She paused. It doesn't move overnight, I know, Mag said, but does it move? Harlan closed her folio. Yes, she said. It moves. She looked around the table, at Virginia's careful documents, at Joanne's supplementary notes, at Ruth sitting quietly at the end with her 35 years of knowing these things worked in practice. How long has this network been operational? Harlan said. Not to any one person. To the room in its current form, 8 months, Virginia said. Structure goes back further. And you, Harlan looked at Mag. How long did it take you to put this together? 7 days, Mag said. A brief silence. 7 days, Harlan repeated. We had some advantages, Mag said. We knew what to look for. Harlan looked at her for a moment. Something behind her professional neutrality. A quality of assessment. I've heard the name, Harlan said carefully. In a professional context. Old cases that nobody fully understood. Mag said nothing. I'm not going to ask. Harlan said that's wise, Mag said. Harlan picked up her folio. I'll need Virginia's documents, copies. She keeps the originals. I'll need a formal statement from Cole in the next 48 hours at the field office in Phoenix. And I'll need, she paused, I'll need you to not do anything that disrupts the investigation before we have time to build the structure. I won't disrupt anything, Seg said. But, Harlan said, reading something in Mag's face, you're not finished. There's one more conversation I need to have, said, with Tommy directly. Today, Harlan studied her. Why? Because he needs to understand what's happening. Not from a lawyer, not from an arrest. He needs to hear it from a person. She paused. And because there's a young woman in this town who's been living scared for 3 months. That ends today. Not in a week when the paperwork moves. Harlan was quiet. If you go in there and he feels cornered, she started. He won't, Mag said. I've done this before. Another long look. I need you to be safe, Harlan said. It came out more personally than she'd perhaps intended. She adjusted slightly. I need my witnesses to be safe. I'll be safe, Mag said. Harlan nodded once, extended her hand. Mag shook it. Thursday, Harlan said. Phoenix Field Office. Cole Maddox. 9 in the morning, we'll be there, Mag said. Harlan left the way she'd come. Gray sedan. Gone before anyone would have noticed it arrived, the kitchen exhaled. Virginia set down her pen. Joanne looked out the window. Ruth sat very still's hands table. Is it going to work? He said. Yes, Mag said. How do you know? She picked up her coffee. It had gone cold. She drank it anyway. Because Virginia's documents are airtight, she said. Because Joanne's connection to Harlan is 20 years old and solid. Because Ruth checked the jurisdiction 3 times. She looked at him. And because you told the truth in there. All of it, without hedging. That matters more than people realize, he nodded. Looked at his hands. What about Tommy, he said. That's my next stop, she said. She wore the vest, not as a threat, not as a performance. She wore it because it was what she was. And this conversation required her to be fully what she was. No more sweater and reading glasses, no more corner booth at Dorothy's. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. 68 years old, white hair, the lines of a face that had lived outdoors and through difficult weather. The vest over a plain dark shirt at the patch visible. Clear, the Black Widow with her crown-raised voice. You never really put something down, Mag. You just set it somewhere safe until you need it again. She went to the garage, uncovered the Harley, checked the fuel, turned the key. The engine came alive on the first try. Of course it did. She sat on it for a moment. Let herself feel the vibration through the frame, particular aliveness of a machine running well. Something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Then she backed it out of the garage and rode to the Iron Horse. It was early afternoon. 2 of Tommy's men were outside when she pulled up. They both stopped what they were doing. She cut the engine, swung off the bike, left her helmet on the handlebar. The men looked at the vest, looked at the patch, looked at each other. Neither of them moved to stop her. She went inside. Tommy was at his corner table, same position as the first time she'd seen him here. Phone in one hand, coffee in the other. The posture of a man managing many things. He looked up. This time he recognized her immediately, and this time his eyes went to the vest. She watched his face as they moved to the patch. Watched the very small but unmistakable change, the recalibration that Grease had done in her garage, but faster, sharper. The look of a man who has been doing research and has just seen the thing his research warned him about. She sat down across from him, not invited, not asking. The bar was not empty. 3 men at the pool table, 2 at the bar. But they felt it, the particular quality of a conversation that is about to matter, and they went quiet. Tommy set his phone down. He looked at her for a long time, then he said, You want to tell me what you think you're doing? His voice was even, controlled. The voice of a man who has learned that showing what he feels is a form of information given away. I want to have an honest conversation, he said. I think we're past the point where the other kind is useful. An honest conversation. He leaned back. About what exactly? About Ridgecrest, she said. About Southwest Provision Supply. About Clearwater Holdings. About Garrett Finch, she paused. About what happens next. Something moved through Tommy's face, small, fast. Gone. I don't know what you think you know, he said. You know what I know, she said, because you've been finding out about me. And if you found out enough, you know I don't come to a table with guesses. Silence. At the pool table, nobody was playing anymore. The men I have coming at the end of the month, Tommy said slowly. The arrangement I have in place. This town is not going to work, Mag said. Not anymore. He studied her. She let him look, let him take his time. There was no advantage in rushing this. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice had changed, slightly. The way a structure sounds different when something inside it is shifted, Tommy, she said. I want to tell you a story. I don't bore you. You should hear this one. She kept her voice quiet, even. The tone of someone recounting fact, not performing. 1985. Flagstaff. There was a chapter of the Outlaws there, 40 members at peak, full operation, real money moving. She paused. They hurt someone who was connected to my network, not badly physically. But badly enough, Tommy said nothing. We didn't retaliate, she said, not directly. We spent 6 weeks doing what we do, talking to the right people, providing information to people who needed it, connecting dots that should have been connected years earlier. She looked at him steadily. The chapter's financial operation collapsed first. Then the leadership started having legal problems, unrelated, on the surface, to anything we'd done. Then the members started leaving. Then the whole thing simply stopped existing. She let that sit. Nobody went to prison for what they did to our member. That wasn't the point. The point was they couldn't do it again. Tommy's jaw was tight. That was 40 years ago, he said. The method hasn't changed, she said. Because it works. He looked at the patch. Who else is here, he said. In Ridgecrest right now. People who are good at what they do, she said. The FBI. We'll have a complete financial picture of your operation by the end of the week, she said. Virginia Strand's work. I'd be surprised if you haven't heard her name. Something. A flash of recognition in his eyes. He had heard it. The books, he said. Very quiet. The books, she confirmed. He was still for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you want?" And there it was. The question that always came eventually. Not from fear, exactly. The intelligence that recognized when the situation had changed and the old strategy no longer applied. "I want Danny Shaw's debt cleared," she said. "Today. In writing. Signed by you." The original amount was $3,000. She'll pay that back over 12 months. The rest disappears. He looked at her. "That's it?" he said. "That's the personal part," she said. "The rest is already in motion and is not mine to stop." He understood what she meant. The FBI didn't negotiate through her. What she'd brought to Harlan would move on its own timeline now. "You're burning down the whole operation," he said. "Your operation burned itself down," she said. "The moment you walked into a town where I live." He was quiet for a long time. She let the quiet be. "Danny Shaw," he said finally. "Fine. Done today. In writing," she said, and witnessed he reached for his phone, made a call. She watched him write it out, a brief formal statement signed. He pushed it across the table. She looked at it. Didn't pick it up yet. "One more thing," she said. He waited. "The people in this town who've been pressured into arrangements over the past 3 months, the others like Danny, I want them released from those arrangements as well. Today," she paused. "I know there are at least 4 others." The muscle in his jaw moved. "That's more than you came in here for," he said. "It's what's right," she said. "Which is all I've ever worked from." He looked at her for a long moment. The kind of look that was reassessing everything. How he'd read this situation, how he'd read this town, how he'd read the woman in the corner of a diner who hadn't looked up from her newspaper. He made 2 more calls. When he was done, he set his phone down. "It's done," he said. She picked up the document, folded it, placed it in her vest pocket. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. Not as gratitude or a favor. As recognition that he'd made a choice that was, however late, the right one. She stood up. "For what it's worth," she said, "I'm not your enemy. I never was. I'm the consequence of the choices you made when you came to a town that had people in it who mattered." He didn't look at her. "Go, Miss Calloway," he said. His voice was flat. Not angry. Emptied out. She walked to the door. She was halfway through it when his voice came. "How do you do it?" he said. She stopped, turned back. He wasn't looking at her still. He was looking at the table in front of him. But the question was real. 40 years, he said. "And you still?" He shook his head. "How do you still care this much about people you don't even know?" She thought about that. "Because someone cared about me once," she said, "when they didn't have to. And I understood what that meant." She paused. "And I decided early that I wanted my life to mean that, whatever else it meant." She left. He found Eddie Voss at the gas station on Route 9. He was leaning against his truck. He'd been waiting. She didn't know how he'd known to wait there. Perhaps he'd seen the Harley go past. Perhaps instinct. She pulled up. Parked. He looked at the Harley. Then at the vest. "You went in there," he said. "Yes, and it's done. The debts are cleared. The people Tommy was pressuring are released." He let out a slow breath. He's not going to do anything dramatic," she said. "He's smart enough to know the situation. What happens next is federal. It's already in motion." She looked at him. "What he does with that information is his decision." Grease nodded, looked out at the road. An 18-wheeler went past heading west. The dust settled. "What happens to me?" he said. "You cooperated," she said. "You provided information. You facilitated access to evidence. That matters." She paused. "I've spoken to the agent handling the case. Cooperation is on the record. It won't erase everything," he said. "No," she said. "It won't. There's no formula that erases everything." She looked at him directly. "But Eddie, you chose something this week. When it cost you something to choose it, that goes on the ledger." She paused. "It stays there." He was quiet. His hands were in his jacket pockets. He looked out at the desert like a man reading something written a long way off. "I sold my '77 Shovelhead in 1991, he said, "for rent money. I was broke, living out of a storage unit, and I needed the cash." He paused. "I've thought about that decision for 30 years. How different things might have been if I'd kept it. Found another way to cover the rent." Mag waited. "That's ridiculous," he said. "I know that's ridiculous. It's a motorcycle. It doesn't determine anything. It's not ridiculous, she said. It's a marker, a point where things went one way instead of another. We all have those. He looked at her. What's yours? He said. She didn't answer immediately. 1978, she said. A kitchen in Albuquerque. A woman named Carol Shaw sitting across from me asking if I was going to do something or just be angry. She paused. I could have stayed angry. That's a choice, too. A lot of people make it. I didn't, she said. He nodded slowly. Looked back at the road. What do I do now? He said. Go somewhere quiet for a while, she said, when the FBI calls, and they will cooperate. Answer every question fully, she paused, and then figure out what the next chapter looks like. You're 61. That's not nothing. It's not the end. He looked at her. Something in his face she recognized. The specific look of a person who hasn't been told they had a future in a while. All right, he said. He got in his truck. She watched him drive east. The dust behind him thinned and disappeared. She stood alone at the gas station for a moment. Desert light. A hawk turning slow circles somewhere high above, the sound of nothing much, which in Arizona has a specific texture and weight. She got back on the Harley, rode home slowly. Not because she was tired, because she wanted to feel the town around her. The streets she'd walked for 11 years, the hardware store, Dorothy's diner, the school the young people used to fill, the church on the corner with the peeling paint that the congregation repainted every 2 years with whatever they could collect, Ridgecrest. 3,000 people who were tired, who were perhaps, now, a little less alone in their tiredness. Cole was at the hospital. Mag got the call at 4 in the afternoon from Virginia, 2 of Tommy's men. Not acting on Tommy's orders, it would turn out, but on their own anger at sensing the collapse of something, had found Cole walking to the convenience store 3 blocks from Sycamore Street. It had been brief. 4 minutes, maybe 5. They'd known they were taking a risk. That was why it was quick. Quick was enough. He was at Ridgecrest's small urgent care clinic. 2 broken ribs, a split lip, a concussion that the doctor said was moderate. Mag drove there, walked in, found him in the 3rd curtain bay. He was sitting up. They'd wrapped his ribs. He had the particular stillness of someone for whom breathing is currently a deliberate act. He looked at her when she came in. I should have been more careful, he said. Yes, she said, not it wasn't your fault. Not you couldn't have known. He was 28 and needed to develop better instincts. Softening it wouldn't help him develop them. But you made it, she said. And they didn't finish what they started, which means they got scared and ran. Which means they know it's over. Tommy know they did this? I don't know yet, she said. It doesn't change the outcome either way. The case moves forward. She sat in the chair beside the bed. Cole! What happened to you today, this is the price. It's real. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. He looked at the ceiling. I know, he said. You made choices this past year that put you in the room with those men, she said. And you made choices last week that put you on the right side of something. Both of those are true simultaneously. She paused. The second set doesn't cancel the first. But it matters. It matters a great deal. He was quiet. Carol said something like that to me once, he said. When I was about 16, I'd gotten into some trouble at school. Nothing serious, but enough. She sat with me in her kitchen and said, he paused. She said the choices you make when it costs you something are the only ones worth counting. Mag smiled. Small. Real, that sounds like Carol, she said. They sat for a while. The urgent care clinic was quiet in the late afternoon. Somewhere down the hall, someone's child was crying and being comforted. The ordinary sounds of people getting through things. The appointment in Phoenix, Cole said. Tomorrow. 9 o'clock, I'll drive you, she said. You don't have to. I'll drive you, she said again. He nodded. Virginia, Joanne, and Ruth were at the kitchen table when Mag got home. The documents had been copied, organized, and sent to Harlan that morning. The originals were packaged and ready. Supplementary research Joanne had compiled. Corporate histories. The pattern of Garrett Finch's previous clients. 3 years of news coverage on the Phoenix financial structure was in a separate folder. Their work in Ridgecrest was essentially done. They knew it. She knew it. Virginia looked at Mag when she came in, looked at her face. How is he? Virginia said 2 broken ribs. Concussion. He'll be fine. Joanne set down her pen. Do you want me to make some calls about those 2? No, Mag said. The FBI will have them. Let it move through the right channels. She sat down. Someone put tea in front of her. She didn't look to see who. The town, Ruth said carefully. People here, they don't know much of what happened. How do you want to handle that? Mag thought about it. Dorothy knows enough to reassure people, she said. Pete Sandoval knows enough. They'll talk to the right people in the right way. She paused. Ridgecrest doesn't need a full accounting. They need to wake up next week and find out Tommy Briggs is gone and the pressure is off, and they can breathe again. She looked at the table. That's enough, and us? Virginia said. You go home, Mag said. All of you. Tomorrow, Joanne looked at her. You're sure? You've done what you came to do, Mag said. More than what you came to do. She looked at each of them. Thank you. For coming when I called. For not making me say please. You would have said please, Virginia said. Eventually, Mag allowed something around the table that wasn't quite laughter but was close to it. The sound of people who have been through something together and can feel it closing behind them. The call came at 5:30, Mag's phone. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered, Calloway, Harlan's voice, but different from the morning, tighter. I need to tell you something before you hear it another way. Tell me, Mag said. We received an audio file this afternoon. Approximately 90 minutes of recorded conversation between Tommy Briggs and an unidentified third party. Covers financial arrangements, names of the Phoenix backers, and 3 specific references to the Scottsdale property transfers. A pause. Sent from a burner phone, no identifying information. But the metadata puts the recording device in Ridgecrest. Over the past 3 weeks, Mag was quiet. Whoever sent it, Harlan continued, knew exactly what we needed and exactly when to send it. The timing, sent this afternoon after your conversation with Briggs, means they were watching the situation closely. Another pause. This recording, combined with Virginia's documents and Cole's statement, is going to make this case significantly stronger than I expected this morning. I see, Mag said. Do you know who sent it? Mag thought about Hank Dooley, sitting at her kitchen table 2 days ago, not taking the coffee she offered, saying I've done something I can't undo, her telling him, think about what you have, what you've seen, heard, been told. Whether any of it was documented anywhere, she had not told him to record Tommy. She had not needed to. No, she said. I don't know. A silence. The kind that said Harlan suspected the answer was more complicated than that and had decided not to push it. All right, Harlan said. We'll be in touch. Mag set the phone down, sat still for a long moment. Hank Dooley would not escape consequences for what he'd done. That was not in her hands. The FBI investigation would find him, eventually, one way or another. His cooperation would matter, his recording would matter, but it would not erase what he'd chosen when the pressure was on. She understood that. She even forgave it, quietly, without fanfare. The way real forgiveness usually works. The choices you make when it costs you something, Carol had told a 16-year-old boy in a kitchen somewhere, are the only ones worth counting. Hank had finally made one of those. Late, but made. She got up, went to the window. The sunflowers in the last of the afternoon light. You too, Hank, she said quietly. To no one in the room, then she went to make dinner. That evening was quiet. Virginia worked in the spare room until late. Joanne called her editor, old habit. She had to tell someone about stories even when she couldn't write them. Ruth went to bed early, the way people do when they've been running on purpose for a week, and the purpose is winding down. Mag sat in the living room. She had the photograph out. The one from 1982. Albuquerque, 15 women on motorcycles. She found Carol Shaw in it. Third from the left, back row, young. Laughing at something off camera. The way Carol had laughed, full and sudden, like it surprised even her. She found herself, second row, center, not laughing, looking directly at the camera. Something in her expression that was part defiance, part determination, and part a quiet fury that had been turned into something useful. She sat with the photograph for a long time, then she put it back in the chest, went to the garage. The Harley sat uncovered. She hadn't put the tarp back. She wasn't sure she was going to. She stood beside it for a moment. Then she sat on the workbench stool. The vest was still on the hook. She looked at it, thought about Ray. He had been gone 18 years, long enough that the grief had changed its shape, not gone, just reorganized. Become part of the furniture of who she was rather than a wound she moved around carefully. She talked to him sometimes, in the garage mostly, where the Harley was. Spent so much time, we held it, she said quietly. The network held, the people held. She looked at the vest, at the patch. Danny's going to be all right. Cole's going to be all right. The town's going to be all right, she breathed. I didn't want to come back to this, she said. I want you to know that. I was content, or close enough to content that I wasn't looking for anything else. She paused. But it found me. The way these things do. She put her hand on the fuel tank of the Harley. I think you'd say that's what the whole thing was always for, she said. The training, the network, the years of it. Not to be used every day, not to be a permanent posture, but to be there. For when it's needed. She looked at the inscription on the vest from across the room. even though she couldn't read it from this distance. She knew it by memory. For the ones who can't speak for themselves, I think you'd say I got it right this time. The garage was quiet, the desert night outside. Stars, the low sound of wind, longer, not sad, not triumphant. Somewhere in the settled space between them, then she got up, turned off the light, went inside. Friday morning came in clear and cold. The kind of Arizona morning that reminded you the desert was not only heat, it had depth and silence and a particular quality of light in the early hours that made ordinary things look considered. Chosen, Virginia left at 7. They hugged at the back door. They'd known each other too long for that. 4 years next time, Virginia said. Not 4 years, Mag said. Six months, Virginia offered. 6 months, Mag agreed. Ruth left at 7:30, a firm handshake, a look that communicated a great deal in very few words, which was Ruth's primary mode of communication. Joanne lingered. She always had. She was the kind of person who needed to see a thing fully before she could leave it. I'm going to write about this someday, she said. Not now, maybe not for years, but someday I know, Mag said. I'll change all the names, I know that too. Joanne put her hand briefly on Mag's shoulder, squeezed once, then picked up her bag and walked to her rental car without looking back. Mag watched the car until it turned the corner. Then she went inside to wake Cole Phoenix, the FBI field office. 9 o'clock. Cole walked in with the particular careful movement of a man with 2 broken ribs who was not going to let that be visible. He almost succeeded. Harlan met them in the lobby. She looked at Cole's face. At the bruising that had fully appeared overnight in shades of purple and green, I heard, she said. We have the 2 individuals in custody. Cole looked at Mag. Federal charges, Harlan said. Assault connected to an ongoing federal investigation. They made it worse for themselves. She said it without satisfaction. Just fact. She led Cole to a conference room. Looked back at Mag. This will take most of the day. I'll be here, Mag said. He found a chair in the lobby. A coffee machine down the hall. A window that looked out onto a Phoenix street where people moved through their Friday morning with the urgent purposefulness of people who had places to be. She sat. She was not a person who struggled with stillness. She had learned a long time ago that waiting was not wasted time. Now was time doing something specific and necessary, consolidating, settling, letting things take their shape. She thought about Danny Shaw, who had called last night, voice shaky with something between relief and disbelief, after Tommy's man had delivered the signed document releasing her from the debt. How did you? It's handled, Mag had said. But what did you? Danny, it's handled. Go eat something. Sleep. Call me this weekend. A pause. Then my mom used to say you were the most capable person she knew. Your mom was biased, Mag had said. She was also right, Danny had said. Mag had not known what to say to that, so she'd said good night, which was honest and sufficient. She thought about Pete Sandoval, who had called at 8 this morning from the hardware store to say that 2 of Tommy's men had been in last night to tell him the backlot arrangement was off. No explanation, no apology. Just off. Pete had said, I don't know what you did, Mag, but thank you. You would have held the line anyway, she'd said. Maybe, he'd said. But it's easier to hold the line when you're not holding it alone. She had thought about that for a long time afterward. Cole came out at 3:15. He looked drained in the way that was specific to having told a hard truth fully and completely for 6 hours. A particular kind of exhaustion. Not bad exhaustion. The kind that comes after something necessary. They walked to the car. Neither of them spoke until they were on the highway heading back toward Ridgecrest. Then Cole said, They asked about you. Mag kept her eyes on the road. What did you tell them? That you were a woman who lived in Ridgecrest and kept sunflowers in her garden. He paused. And that I wouldn't be sitting here without you. What did Harlan say? She said. He stopped, almost smiled despite the split lip. She said that tracks. Mag allowed herself a small sound that was adjacent to a laugh. They drove. Desert spread out on both sides. Brown and red and gold and impossibly large. The sky going orange ahead of them as the afternoon moved toward evening. A landscape that had been here long before any of this and would be here long after. That put things in a proportional frame. What happens now? Not anxiously. Genuinely, now the federal case builds, she said. That takes months, maybe longer. You'll be contacted periodically. Answer honestly every time. She paused. The cooperation agreement means you're protected as long as you stay inside it. Stay inside it. And personally, you mentioned Pete Sandoval has a garage, she said. He's been looking for someone who knows engines. I may have mentioned your name. Cole looked at her. When? Yesterday morning. Before everything else, he was quiet for a moment. You were setting that up before you knew. I was setting it up because you needed somewhere to go, she said. The rest of it didn't change that. He looked out the window. The desert going past, I don't know how to. Don't, she said. Just do the work. Do it well. Show up on time. And when Pete teaches you something, actually listen. Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. They drove the rest of the way in a comfortable silence, kind that doesn't need to be filled, the kind that is itself a form of communication. She dropped Cole at the house on Sycamore Street. He'd stay one more night on the couch. Tomorrow he'd find a room somewhere. She'd already spoken to Dorothy, who knew someone with a reasonable rental. She put the car in the garage. The Harley sat where she'd left it, uncovered. She stood looking at it for a moment. Then she took the vest off the hook, turned it over. Inside for the ones who can't speak for themselves. RC. She pressed 2 fingers to the letters, same as she had a week ago, but different now. The same gesture carrying a different weight. She folded the vest carefully, carried it to the chest in the corner, opened the lid, set the vest inside, looked at it for a long moment. Then she closed the lid, but did not lock it, left the key in the lock. She wasn't putting it away. She was putting it to rest. There was a difference. One was closing a door. The other was knowing the door was there, knowing where the key was, trusting herself to know when it needed to open again. She covered the Harley, then stopped, took the tarp back off, left the bike uncovered. Some things you keep ready. She walked out of the garage, stood in the backyard for a moment. Sunflowers were going gold and brown at the edges, late in their season now. They'd need to be cut back soon. New seeds put in for the spring. She'd do that this weekend. She went inside. Made dinner for 2. Cole appeared at the kitchen door when he smelled it, because that was what people did when there was food and they hadn't eaten since morning. They ate at the kitchen table. Not much conversation. The comfortable kind of quiet that settles between people who have been through something together. After dinner, Cole helped clear up without being asked, washed his own dishes, said goodnight at 9 and went to the couch. Mag sat in the living room. The house made its sounds. Familiar. Constant. She thought about everything and nothing for a while. Then she opened the side table drawer and took out a piece of paper and a pen, wrote at the top. Things I know to be true. She wrote for a while. That people are more than their worst choices. That patience is not the same as passivity. That a network built on trust is stronger than one built on fear. Because fear has a ceiling and trust does not. That the best thing you can do for someone is sometimes to wait for them to find the door themselves. That grief doesn't end. It changes. It becomes part of how you love the people who are gone, a form of continued relationship, not an interruption of one. That a 1979 Harley-Davidson shovelhead, properly maintained, will start on the first try when you need it. That Ray was right. About most things. About the important ones. She set the pen down, read what she'd written, folded the paper and put it in her pocket, turned off the lamp. Saturday morning. Early, she was up before the light, coffee on. The kitchen in the particular gray of pre-dawn. Quiet. 5:45. She drove to Dorothy's. Dorothy was already there. Of course she was. Dorothy was always already there. 71 years old, and the diner opened at 6 and had for 40 years, and that wasn't going to change. Mag came in the back. Dorothy looked up from the coffee machine. You look like yourself, Dorothy said. I always look like myself, Mag said. You know what I mean. Mag poured her own coffee, sat at the counter instead of her corner booth. Something small and deliberate about that. Is it over? Dorothy said. The immediate part, Mag said. The legal part will take time, but the pressure on the town, that's done. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. She wiped down the counter, a motion so habitual it had become gesture rather than action. I've been running this diner for 40 years, Dorothy said. I've seen things come through this town. Good things and bad things. Things that stayed and things that moved on. She paused. I never thought I'd see something like this. What you did, I didn't do it alone. Started it, Dorothy said. Alone. On a Tuesday morning when a man walked in here and made a joke at your expense and you didn't even look up from your newspaper. She looked at Mag. That was the moment, wasn't it? When you decided. Mag thought about it. Earlier than that, she said. When I heard the bikes on the road. Before I even saw them, she drank her coffee. Some things you know, Dorothy nodded. The way of someone who understood this without needing the explanation. The pie today is cherry, Dorothy said. It's early batch. It's 6 in the morning, Dorothy. The question is whether you want some. Not whether it's appropriate. Mag almost smiled. Yes, she said. Thank you. Dorothy cut her a slice. They sat in the quiet diner in the early morning. The light coming up slow outside. The town waking up around them without knowing quite what had been held together on its behalf this week, without needing to know. That was fine, that had always been fine. She drove home as the sun came fully up, parked in front, walked around to the backyard, the sunflowers. She stood looking at them. Then she went inside, got her gloves and her clippers, and came back out. She worked for an hour, cutting back the spent ones, clearing the space for what would come in the spring. The work of a garden is mostly preparation, getting the ground ready for something that doesn't exist yet, trusting that the season will turn, that the right things, given the right conditions, will come up again. She knew something about that. When she was done, she stood back, looked at the cleared bed. Then she went inside and washed her hands and made another cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table and opened the newspaper and read.